Hi, it's Christina again. Welcome back to Cemetery of Choice, where we look at women's abortion deaths both before and after widespread legalization in the U.S. Today is August 3rd, and we have three anniversaries today. The first was a 22-year-old woman in Detroit. She left two children motherless when she died August 3rd, 1982, of a clotting disorder after a safe, legal saline abortion performed by this fellow, Yul Choi, at Plymouth General Hospital near Detroit. Angel's mother sued, but she was awarded a meager settlement of $6,000 from Choi and $2,500 from the hospital. Roughly half of that was eaten up by legal fees and funeral expenses. And Choi was also sued on behalf of two abortion patients who'd been left incapacitated by their injuries, and on behalf of a baby who had been born alive and left in a bucket, which delayed medical care until after she'd suffered serious injuries, and she was also left incapacitated. So this guy's a piece of work. Then we have a delayed transfer in New York. A national Eastern Women's Center is a National Abortion Federation member facility. And a lot of times when there's abortion stories, the media will contact National Abortion Federation and just print whatever they say. Oh, this was an outlier. Nothing like that would ever happen in one of our clinics. And sometimes it is one of their clinics. Abu, the butcher of Avenue A, Hyatt, was a National Abortion Federation member. Killed a teenage patient, sexually abused patients, ripped the arm off a 32-week baby, and then the baby was born alive. It just, oh, he's an outlier. Yeah, Kermit Gosnell was an outlier. He worked at a NAF clinic one day a week. So I really don't have a whole lot of faith in National Abortion Federation clinics. Now, in 1991, a young woman named Dawn, 21 years old, she went to Eastern Women's Center on August 2nd. She was about 15 or 16 weeks into her pregnancy, so a doctor inserted laminaria to dilate her cervix. And those are little dried, sterile seaweed sticks. And they're inserted into the cervix, and they absorb moisture, they swell up, they dilate the cervix. So they inserted those on the 2nd. She came back the following day. Now, during the abortion, she stopped breathing, and her oxygen saturation levels dropped to 88%. And the anesthesiologist administered oxygen. Her oxygen levels came back up. The anesthesiologist didn't make a note of the incident or mention it to Orrin Moore, this guy who was doing the abortion. He later let his New York license expire and relocated to Kansas, where he had all kinds of fun. So they declared Dawn stable with her blood pressure recorded at 8:55 a.m. as 130/80, which is a little high, but not alarming. She was sent to the recovery room just down the hall, and her blood pressure was recorded as only 90/60, with a pulse of 96. But in spite of this alarming sign that Dawn was in severe trouble, the nurse just noted that she seemed unusually drowsy and left the recovery room. Now, there were several other nurses there with Dawn, who was the only patient, but nobody documented that they attended her in any way. When the head nurse arrived 5 minutes later, she found Dawn completely unresponsive, tried to find a pulse, and sent for help. It was about 5 minutes until the nursing supervisor arrived and started mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And there was no crash cart immediately available. There was no ambubag immediately available. About 2 minutes after the nursing supervisor started CPR, another anesthesiologist got there with oxygen and an ambubag and started bagging her and took her to the operating room, intubated her, and started CPR. It wasn't until 10 a.m., nor nearly an hour after they noticed that she wasn't breathing, that they transferred her to the hospital. She was pronounced dead at 4:30 p.m. Now, an autopsy noted that she'd suffered an amniotic fluid embolism. Oops. And the defendants argued that it can't be prevented or treated, and thus Dawn would have died no matter what they had done. Which evidently the jury didn't buy that. They found the clinic and the nurse who dragged her feet about noticing that Dawn wasn't breathing, found them 100% liable. And there are two other patients who died after abortions at Eastern Women's Center. Dawn Ravenel was just a 13-year-old girl whose 15-year-old boyfriend paid for her abortion with a credit card he borrowed from a relative. Dawn's school had arranged the abortions secretly. The first Dawn's family knew about this was when they got a call from St. Luke's Hospital saying to come down. Their daughter was fighting for her life. And then they also performed an abortion that left Venus Ortiz incapacitated, and she never recovered from her coma. She died several years later. So, and you can see here, this is the lawsuit regarding that death. Oh, and here's Yul Choi. There's some stuff about him where you can go and you can find those suits. And then the last death here was actually declared a homicide on July 28th, 2009. A 30-year-old Chinese woman went to Andrew Rutland's abortion facility in San Gabriel, California, and Rutland's records were paltry and inadequate. He administered medications that he was not authorized to dispense. Ying began to have a clear adverse reaction to the drugs. So Rutland asked an acupuncturist who shared his office to call 911. And the paramedics who responded said that nobody was doing anything to help her when they arrived, even though she was in cardiorespiratory arrest. There was a crash cart at the clinic, albeit one with expired medications, and another one in Rutland's car, but nobody got them out and used them. And Rutland had been in previous trouble with the medical board, was in violation of a lot of their stipulations when he provided his lethal care to this young woman. And you can see articles just about the trouble this guy got into. But from what I understand, he just permanently lost his license. He was never actually prosecuted in that. It's just amazing to me how quacktastic these people can be and still be allowed to practice medicine. And yet part of it is that there's a deliberate blind eye turned toward abortion, which is why Kermit Gosnell in Pennsylvania was able to be so appalling for so long, because officials know if they go in and they enforce the regulations, the clinics aren't going to be able to meet them and they'll have to close them down. And a clinic that's filthy as a bus station men's room is, in these authorities' opinion, better than having to travel a little further to a clean one. Although Gosnell was in Philadelphia, it's not like there weren't abortion clinics up the wazoo in the Philadelphia area, and then down in Maryland, Delaware, up to New York. There were plenty of abortion clinics. So the idea, well, we have to leave him open even though there's flea-infested cats crapping all over the floor. Otherwise, women won't have access. That's the lamest excuse ever. So I'm really hoping that pro-choice citizens start holding the abortion lobby responsible when they are making excuses and letting these people get away with crap and women wind up dying.